Cheers, Adam. Evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm Matthew Clubb. I run an architecture retrofit business here in Aberdeen, and as Nick says, I've done a lot of work with Nick. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about what this means at scale. We don't have time to be doing one house here, one house there. We need to be doing this street by street. We've been doing a little bit of work on that. But yeah, for those of you who don't know us, we have a team of, oh, come on, here we go. There we go. So I'm going to cover, yeah, what does good look like? I'm going to give you some place-based examples from a few projects we've worked on and just talk about community-based approaches and what I think needs to kind of happen next. So yeah, this is us. I've got a team of 6 here. Our office is on Union Street. But we stretch our arms as far as Dundee and Inverness as well. And we use a lot of technical methods to assess buildings and diagnose them. And we are also building kind of pattern book approaches to different house types because there are commonalities and things we can apply across different building types. And we do a lot of community engagement work as well. So we talk about future-proofing buildings, because this, although I know everyone here is very concerned about emissions and energy use, this really isn't just about energy. So to us, future-proofing our home is about energy, health, and climate resilience. Yes, we want to generate good renewable energy and reduce our carbon emissions, but if we don't deal with fuel poverty and mold risk and overheating risk and flooding risk at the same time, then our kids aren't going to forgive us. So just to touch on a couple of these, fuel poverty, it's over 30% in Aberdeenshire now. The Energy Savings Trust has been around for 30 years and fuel poverty has actually only gone up. So we need a step change in how we're doing this. And of course, that causes a lot of impacts on the NHS, and stress and anxiety is a big factor in fuel poverty, actually, as well. Thermal comfort, we all like to be cozy. It's amazing how reticent people are, I think, on, actually living in cold environments. People do die from extreme cold every year, thousands in this country, and we need to get away from these peaky, spiky curves of heating into smoother heating curves, because that helps with heat pump efficiency as well. And indoor air quality, in a lot of cases, our homes are literally killing people because of the pollutants that we're generating in the home. We try and put as many sensors into buildings as possible. And quite often we find that indoor environments actually amplify the outdoor pollutants. Here, the outdoor shown in blue, and the upper line, a colourful red and yellow, which means it's peaking above World Health Organization limits for particulate matter in this case. So we've got to do something about indoor air quality. And a lot of the time that's also linked to mold risk. So, mold's a bit of an epidemic now in this country. And we've got the introduction of Awab's law, which should make a huge difference in social housing. But we see mold in at least 50% of the buildings that we survey. And not forgetting overheating risk. By 2050, we'll have potentially 8-degree hotter summer days in Scotland. This week's a great example. Flooding risk, will have 25% more rainfall. So you don't have to be living near the coast or by a river. That level of rainfall, are your gutters designed for it? Are the sewers designed for it? These are all the things we've got to kind of think about. So, we need a raft of different solutions to solve this. This isn't just about heat pumps and renewables. We've got to look at a spectrum of solutions. And that's what we do. We impartially sort of look at all that. And we put it into a plan. So this is, pretty typical of what we can do. Most houses in the Northeast, because they're so poor on energy performance, we can come up with a plan to reduce energy loss by about 80 or 90%, but we do it in stages. So we increase comfort on the orange line, and we reduce emissions and energy loss and build it into a plan. So what does this look like on a place scale? So few examples here, starting with heat networks. So heat networks are great. absolutely great, but they're not a solution in and of themselves. So Torry, I'm sure everyone in here is familiar with the energy from waste plant that's now been installed in Torry. It's generating enough excess heat. They call it waste heat. Excess heat to heat potentially most of the homes in Aberdeen, but at least the homes in Torry. So this is the plan for the heat network, which is currently being rolled out in Balnagask. And in theory, it's been pitched as solving fuel poverty. I think the reality is it's not going to do that because the maintenance costs of the network itself are quite high. But to our point, it's not going to do anything about air quality or overheating risk or necessarily thermal comfort or flooding risk. And if you take a house on the edge of that area that isn't going to be on that network, you've got a different sort of set of challenges, because you've got the emissions and everything on top of that. So heat networks are fine, but they're only serving one kind of purpose. So another example here on a project I'm working on in Daviot. So I live in Daviot, which is a village out past Inverurie. And again, I'm looking at how do we decarbonise the whole of Daviot, but how do we actually future-proof the whole of Daviot? And we're going to need a mix of solutions, as I've said. So, we know we've actually got a piece of land just behind the church that could host a 2.6 megawatt solar array. We know that we've got lots of different building types. We've got roughly 3 different types of building, but they've all got varying energy efficiency. And we know we can look at heat networks because that it just works even on a small scale like this. What if we could get all those solutions together in one solution? So at the moment, I know that we've had a feasibility study done on the solar farm that would generate about 1.8 megawatt hours of energy a year. At the moment, the 250 homes in the village are using roughly this much energy for heating and electricity. Now, if we can go and do retrofit and reduce the energy loss from those buildings, then I've done a modest sort of 60% here across all the homes, accounting for some shortfalls or whatever. And then finally, you make the switch to a heat pump. And if we use ground source heat pumps on what's called shared ground loops, then we could expect to get 4, 5, maybe 600% efficiency. So all of a sudden, look at that. We've got free energy for everyone in the village, heating and electricity, if we can manage the storage cycles of energy through the winter. That's the biggest part of this challenge. But the other challenge we've really got is that we're grid constrained. So we've had a feasibility study done on the solar farm, and we are grid constrained to the north and the south, which makes our project completely unviable at the moment unless we pay millions to upgrade the grid ourselves. And the other challenge is really the funding model. So, at the moment, there's funding for little discrete things. There's funding for the solar farm. There's funding for an individual to get some money from Home Energy Scotland for their own home. But, we don't have this strategic approach of doing this. And there are organisations like Living Places and Bankers Without Boundaries looking at funding models that would work for this. But, that really is the hot topic for me at the moment. Another project we've recently worked on in the Borders. This is the village of Oxton in the Borders. And we were asked to do some retrofit engagement work here in Justice Park, which is a collection of 45 timber frame houses built in the sort of late noughties, early noughties. And in the council's local heat and energy efficiency strategy, this cluster of housing is labelled as heat pump ready. So is it? Now, of course, it's not. So we did a number of surveys. I think we surveyed 8 buildings in total, and really typically found lots of missing insulation, disturbed insulation, cold bridging, air tightness issues, thermal bridging that was actually causing mold in several of the homes that was really bad, and very poor ventilation systems, and glazing was a bit of a mix, but still some single glazing in some of these buildings. And ultimately for me, like this is the complexity of what we're looking at. So on the left, we've just got the addresses of the homes, and then in theory, all these homes are built at the same time. But look how many different heating systems there are on the go there. We've got oil, we've got direct electric, we've got LPG, and the thing is, this community is actually a really well-knit community. They bulk buy all their oil, and they bulk buy all their LPG, and the LPG is actually a buried tank in the ground that is piped around the whole park. So they've got their own little gas grid. And it's like, well, Jesus, if we can do that, why the hell can't we do a ground source heat pump network? So yeah, and then you look at the pipe work now. Without getting too techie, microbore is tiny pipes. Most of us have 15 mil copper pipes in our connected to our gas boilers. Microbore, you might hear some people say it is, but it's not compatible essentially with heat pumps. You need bigger pipe work ideally to run a heat pump efficiently. So half the houses there are needing completely new pipe work put in. It's all under the floors. That's very disruptive. And the other thing, which isn't on here, is about the incoming supply. So two of the houses had 100 amp single phase supply. Most of the others had a 60 amp supply. If you're going to get a heat pump, you're probably going to have to upgrade to a 100 amp supply. Can the grid take that? But we put measures into stage 1 measures and stage 2 measures, and you can see a lot of commonalities here, and that was great. Community engagement was great, and yeah. Now, can the grid handle it? This is the grid in this part of the world is managed by SP Energy Networks, and this is their online portal where you can look at grid capacity. And a red line is bad. So they are grid constrained, as we'd call it. And so if you put anything in here, the grid's going to need upgraded. So, overall sort of conclusions from all this are that, every home is different. They might look the same on paper, but we have a lot of crap data on housing on the national database. Like, we need much better data. And ultimately, that's actually a really good way of engaging people as well. So yeah, you've got to go in every home. Yeah, and doing those simple stage 1 measures that I had in that table there, all those measures I had there were all things that are actually not that disruptive. So they had very common air tightness issues around skirting boards and windows. They all needed new fans. There was lots of accessible loft insulation that wouldn't be disruptive. You just need to get in there and actually redo it all properly. And smart thermostats aren't disruptive. And if you did all that, you'd reduce the peak heating demand by 25%. So that means 25% smaller heat pumps, means 25% potentially less grid upgrade. Okay, we've got to think about electric vehicles for all the houses and things like that. But the point is, this is why we need a package of solutions. And if you think that, then about a heat network, if you could put everyone on a heat network and not have such heavy lead demanding heat pumps, then again, that's going to help. And the other thing that was really interesting for me was that all of these homeowners living in rural locations, they really struggled to get tradesmen in. So, for any sort of job. And now, hey ho, I've got at least eight, maybe 42 homes that all need similar measures. That's something I can take to a medium-sized contractor who's going to have the certifications, who's going to be interested in this, and might even give us a bulk discount. Yeah, so aggregating demand really enables action, and it really was really good. So sorry, I'm probably over my time, but my overall conclusions really at the moment is that the grid is constrained everywhere you look. So if you want to get a heat pump, get in there quick and do it now, because at some point someone on your street is going to go and ask for it, and they're going to say, no, we've got to upgrade the substation. The reality is we need heat networks, and we need retrofit to reduce the amount of energy that we're going to use, so that we don't have to upgrade the grid. We need everything all at once. Yeah, the way that the grid is currently assessed is really dumb. So I've been lucky enough to be part of some workshops, one with SP Energy Networks, and they showed me the online tool that they have internally. and they can simulate. It's great. They can simulate any house connected to the network for a heat pump or an EV. So you can select the row houses and go, right, I'll put heat pumps on all those and EVs on all those. And when we did it on a little trial down in Clackmannanshire, things immediately started going red. So and the shocker of it is they, in the next version of that platform, they'll be able to evaluate solar PV, but they can't do batteries yet. It's just, and batteries are going to be a really key component of this whole mix of understanding, how do we balance the grid on a local scale. So I think the district network operators have got a long way to go until we get to some really intelligent rollout. And so that's the next stage for us, is we're looking at how we develop tools that help that. So yeah, and then community collaboration, as I've shown, is absolutely key. I think, we've got to sell this to everyone, right? We've got to go out there and I've got to sell this to everyone. And how are we going to do that? You've got to, a lot of people just don't care about emissions. But if you can tell them that they're going to be warmer and have a healthier lifestyle, a healthier home, that is a really good engagement tool. So yeah, we need a plan for every home, a retrofit plan for every home. So final shout out is for Nesfit. So this is a local retrofit cooperative I started a few years ago. We were awarded 90,000 from SSEN last year, or earlier this year, to hire our first project coordinator. Her name's Donna. She'll come to the next event, and we're looking at various different things, which I can bore you with another time. Thanks very much.